Our protagonist, having bid farewell to the familiar comforts and routines of his home, sets off on a bold adventure to create his own harem. Equipped with a meticulously detailed map, he sets his eyes on a bustling city situated roughly 500 kilometers away. For an average person, this journey on foot would take about a week. However, our hero is no ordinary traveler. He possesses extraordinary abilities, including a powerful haste spell. With this spell, he can cover the distance in an astonishingly short time of just 4 hours. Aiding him in his rapid journey are a group of fairies who skillfully minimize air friction around him. As a result, he races towards his destination at a speed that seems almost like flying. He effortlessly overtakes wagons, bypasses various obstacles, and moves with a grace and speed that leave onlookers in awe. Upon his arrival in the vibrant and bustling city, which is filled with attractive girls, our hero is eager to put his carefully acquired knowledge to the test in pursuit of his harem. However, he quickly realizes that being a newcomer presents its own set of challenges. His rural background makes him stand out awkwardly amidst the sophisticated city dwellers. In an unfortunate twist of fate, while navigating a dimly lit alley, he attracts the attention of local thugs. These thugs, seeing him as an easy target, demand his possessions. However, they are in for a surprise. Determined not to be dismissed as a mere country bumpkin, our hero decides to fight back. Utilizing his remarkable strength and agility, and with the assistance of fire fairies, he swiftly and decisively defeats the thugs, teaching them a harsh lesson they won't soon forget. After the encounter, our hero reflects on his situation. He decides that to blend in better with the city crowd, he must undergo a transformation. He visits a clothing store, where, despite his initial unfamiliarity with urban fashion, he manages to select a stylish and modern outfit. This change in appearance is the first step in his plan to integrate more seamlessly into city life. Understanding that appearance alone is not enough, he also contemplates modifying his speech. To improve his chances of attracting a city-bred girl, he realizes the importance of sounding like a city dweller. This means shedding his rural accent and adopting the local dialect. With this new strategy in mind, our hero prepares to immerse himself in the urban environment, determined to succeed in his quest. As Orc stands amidst the bustling street, a sudden commotion draws his attention. A wagon pulls up unexpectedly, capturing the interest of the crowd around him. Upon the wagon sits an iron cage, inside of which is an elf, bound and gagged. Her beauty, despite her captive state, is undeniable and leaves Orc speechless and appalled at the sight. He is left wondering why such a dignified being is subjected to such dehumanizing conditions. A mustached man in charge of the wagon steps forward, addressing the crowd. He reveals that the elf is a prized captive from the Ubak forest, intended to be auctioned off at the upcoming Grand Festival. This revelation ignites a fury within Orc, challenging his preconceived notions about monsters. He begins to question why orcs are labeled as monsters when humans engage in such vile acts of kidnapping and selling other sentient beings as mere property. Driven by a newfound sense of justice and determination, Orc decides to take action. His eyes meet those of the elf, and in that moment, he resolves to buy her to save her from further suffering at the hands of humans. There is also a personal motive stirring within him. He desires her for himself. As the wagon departs, Orc spots a poster advertising the Grand Festival auction, noting that he has a 2-month window to formulate a plan. Rather than immediately selling his valuable collection of mushrooms and jewels to gather the required 2 million gil, Orc opts to utilize the business skills he learned from Landor. He begins searching for a suitable stall and eventually encounters a bored woman selling a food stall not far from the main street. Orc surprises the owner by expressing his intent to purchase the stall, not for the food business per se, but for the crucial business permit that comes with it. That night, Orc takes possession of the stall and starts preparing his special dish, Meni Katu, a ground meat cutlet enveloped in a unique, otherworldly breaded minced meat patty. To enhance the flavor, he ventures into the nearby forest to hunt a wild boar, carrying its carcass back to infuse the meat with a distinct taste. Using his physical agility, he also collects rare wild mushrooms and herbs to complement the dish and mitigate the gamey flavor of the boar meat. Despite the skepticism of the stall owner, who has faced numerous failures in the food business, Orc remains steadfast in his confidence. He meticulously prepares the ingredients, combining his culinary skills with the unique resources at his disposal. His goal is to create a delicious and nutritious food item that will appeal to the young workers in the city, ensuring steady sales and income. With this plan, Orc aims to not only gather the funds needed to rescue the elf but also to challenge the unjust practices he has witnessed. He envisions a future where his success in the food business will provide him the means to confront and change the societal norms that allow such atrocities to occur. As he works through the night, Orc is fueled by a mixture of righteous anger and personal ambition, ready to transform his vision into reality. Gathering ingredients from the world's most exquisite supermarket, Mother Nature, Orc begins his culinary adventure by preparing his minced meat patties. He meticulously minces the meat, combines it with other ingredients, and infuses the mixture with his secret blend of spices. With careful hands, he shapes the mixture into inviting patties and gives them a thorough coating. The final and most critical step is cooking. Drawing from the lessons he learned from Laurel, Orc knows that creating a spectacle will attract customers. He places a tantalizing ingredient into the hot oil, releasing a mouth-watering aroma that fills the air. The people strolling down Main Street are irresistibly drawn by the savory scent and soon gather in front of Orc's stall. Orc, ever the showman, cooks the minced meat patties right before their eager eyes. The sizzle of the oil and the sight of the patties turning golden brown capturing the attention of the hungry crowd. Despite their unfamiliarity with deep-fried delicacies, the customers can't resist the tempting look of the food. As they take their first bite, they are amazed by the exceptional taste, and soon, a growing line forms as word of the delicious patties spreads. For the next few days, Orc manages the stall on his own, consistently delighting and satisfying his customers. Some even become addicted to the flavorful meat, returning day after day for more. As his business prospers, Orc decides to give his stall a name, Orc's Mincemeat Katsu. Although Laurel suggests he could have been more imaginative with the name, the business continues to thrive nonetheless. The success of Orc's venture catches the attention of a new competitor, Yamako Mincemeat Katsu. Yamako, the heir to one of the city's wealthiest families, approaches Orc with the claim that he has developed his own recipe. Orc harbors a strong dislike for Yamako and is displeased that he has copied his business idea. However, Orc remains confident in his brand and product. Despite Yamako's wealth and attempts to compete, Orc's original and superior recipe, enhanced by his secret spices, keeps customers loyal to Orc's Mincemeat Katsu. In the food business, just like in popular cooking shows, flavor is paramount. Orc's unique blend of taste and showmanship continues to draw crowds, solidifying his place in the city's vibrant culinary scene. After a few days of struggling with no customers, the employees of Yamako's minced meat stall start to worry about the future of their business. Despite the mounting concern, Yamako refuses to accept defeat and begins actively searching for ways to outperform Orc. However, unbeknownst to Yamako, Orc is several steps ahead. Recognizing the potential limitations of operating a single stall, Orc decides that the time has come to franchise his successful business. Leveraging the well-established brand of Orc's Mincemeat Katsu, he approaches the Merchants Guild with a proposal to open more stalls under his name. To ensure the quality and unique flavor of the products, Orc stipulates that franchisees must purchase his secret spices, significantly increasing his profits. With multiple stalls now under his brand, Orc's earnings multiply tenfold. Embracing the lesson taught by the merchant god Laurel, to make money work for you, Orc's business flourishes. Meanwhile, Yamako, who has not had the chance to learn from Laurel, regrets his attempt to mimic Orc's strategy. Within just 2 months, Orc amasses a substantial fortune of 25 million gil. However, his current goal isn't solely wealth. He aims to acquire the world's most desirable girls. With a specific girl in mind, Orc heads to the grand festival auction. Seated comfortably in the front row, he eagerly awaits the bidding for the elf girl he desires. As the auction progresses and various items are sold, Orc remains uninterested, his focus solely on the elf girl. When she is finally brought to the stage, the bidding starts at 10 million gil and quickly escalates. Orc boldly bids 20 million, shocking the crowd. However, someone soon outbids him at 21 million. Determined to win, Orc raises his bid to his maximum of 25 million. Just as victory seems within his grasp, Yamako unexpectedly bids 30 million gil. Realizing he doesn't have more money to compete, Orc clenches his fists and sits down in defeat. The auction master announces the elf girl's fate. She goes to Yamako for 35 million gil. With shoulders slumped and head hanging low, Orc exits the auction house. Yamako, reveling in his triumph, taunts Orc, rubbing his defeat in his face and emphasizing the wealth gap between them. Despite Yamako's provocations, Orc maintains a devilish grin. Outwardly, he acknowledges his defeat with a calm demeanor, but inside, he seethes with rage. He knows this setback is temporary and that his business acumen and determination will eventually lead him to greater victories. Yamako celebrates his triumph, blissfully unaware of Orc's impending retaliation. As Yamako is preoccupied with hauling a wagon carrying the elf girl, Orc quietly and patiently sets his plan into motion. Moving swiftly and silently, he chases the wagon, leaps onto it, and breaks the lock of the cage holding the elf. With a cloak at the ready, Orc carefully covers the elf and carries her to the safety of a large tree's branch. Yamako, completely oblivious to Orc's actions, continues down the road in his carriage, unaware of the unfolding drama. Orc envisions Yamako's fury upon discovering that the elf girl, whom he bought for 35 million gil, has vanished without a trace. Turning his attention to the elf, Orc gently removes her gag and unties her bindings, carefully checking for any injuries. To his relief, she appears unharmed. As she regains consciousness and meets Orc's gaze, he offers her a reassuring smile, telling her that he has rescued her. The elf girl's face lights up with joy and gratitude for her rescue. However, as she begins to sense a strange aura emanating from Orc, an aura unmistakably that of an orc, she hesitates. The realization of her complex situation dawns on her, and her initial gratitude is tempered by uncertainty and wariness. Despite her mixed feelings, the elf recognizes Orc as her rescuer, though the path ahead remains uncertain and fraught with challenges. Overwhelmed by a surge of fear, the young elf girl let out a piercing scream, the realization dawning upon her that she might have merely exchanged one form of captivity for another. The Orc, fully aware of the grim stereotypes that cloud his kind, tried to calm her. He emphasized that his intention was to rescue her, not to bring her any harm. Yet, despite his best efforts, the elf girl remained bewildered and frightened. The Orc, trying to bridge the gap between them, recalled their shared moment of eye contact while she was in the cage. He explained that he had seen a desperate plea for help in her eyes, a silent cry that had compelled him to act. This revelation managed to soothe her a little, but she still had questions swirling in her mind. Why would an Orc save her? With a heavy sigh, the Orc confessed that initially, he had intended to add her to his harem. However, he was quick to clarify his one unbreakable rule: he would never touch a girl without her explicit consent. Realizing her reluctance, he assured her that he would not lay a finger on her unless she willingly agreed. Despite his honest confession, skepticism lingered in the elf girl's eyes. The Orc, understanding the gravity of the situation, knew that Yamako, the one who had originally captured the elf, would soon notice her absence and possibly send out a search party. Determined to prevent her from falling back into captivity, he decided to escort her back to her village safely. The elf, still puzzled, could not fathom why he would go to such lengths for someone he barely knew. The Orc's response was simple but heartfelt. He hoped that during their journey together, she might come to see him in a different light, perhaps even fall in love with him. Although uncertain, the elf girl accepted his offer to escort her home, expressing her gratitude for his unexpected kindness. The Orc felt a wave of relief at her thankful words, even though a small part of him felt a pang of disappointment that she hadn't instantly developed feelings for him. As they introduced themselves, the Orc revealed his name, and the elf girl, with a sense of relief, shared that her name was Tita. With a newfound sense of purpose, they set off on their journey. After traveling for days, the Orc chose a clearing on a mountainside to take a much-needed break. Grateful for the respite, they both took in the serene surroundings, readying themselves for the road ahead. Needing firewood to cook a warm meal for Tita, the Orc began to devise a plan. Knowing he needed assistance, he called upon the wind fairies. These small, ethereal beings fluttered around him, ready to aid. In the distance, he spotted a large rabbit grazing. With a deft motion, he hurled a rock, its path guided accurately by the fairies, and swiftly ended the rabbit's life. With the rabbit now in hand, the Orc turned to the fairies once more. They helped him prepare the meat intricately. He dressed and cleaned it with precision. He added a blend of secret spices that he carried with him, then covered the meat in a thick layer of clay. As he finished, Tita returned, her arms full of branches for the fire. The Orc arranged these branches into a nest-like structure, placing the clay-covered meat at its center. He then called upon a fire fairy, who ignited the branches with a single touch. Tita watched in amazement as the Orc commanded the fairies with ease. She was impressed by his magical presence, something she had never associated with orcs. As they waited for the meal to cook, the Orc took a moment to reflect on his gratitude for the power granted to him by the Fairy King. When the time came to crack open the clay, a delicious aroma filled the air. The meal, a perfectly cooked beggar's chicken, though in this case, rabbit, was revealed, capturing all the moisture and flavor within its clay shell. Tita, eager to taste it, took a bite and expressed her delight at the exquisite flavor. The Orc smiled, pleased, and shared his portion with her. After they had finished their meal, the Orc prepared a basin of hot water for Tita to wash up. Though she was initially shy, Tita accepted the basin. The Orc turned his back to ensure her privacy, respecting her modesty. Tita, impressed by this unexpected respect, couldn't help but ask if he was truly an orc. The Orc explained that his mother had raised him to always consider a girl's needs, completely unaware that Tita was glancing over her shoulder, pleased with his response. Minutes passed without the Orc turning around, and Tita's admiration for him grew. His gentlemanly behavior was a stark contrast to the typical behavior of orcs she had heard about. Once she was done washing, the orc even offered her a blanket to sleep on, ensuring she would be comfortable for the night. This final act of kindness further solidified Tita's growing respect and appreciation for the orc, who was proving to be very different from the orc she had always feared. At first, Tia is reluctant to accept Orc's offer of a cozy blanket, finding his gesture to be almost overly thoughtful. Despite her reservations, Orc remains persistent, explaining that a fire fairy will ensure the blanket stays warm throughout the night. He further assures her of his unwavering commitment by promising to stay awake and keep vigilant, revealing that his specialized training has rendered sleep unnecessary for him. After a bit of convincing, Tia finally gives in to Orc's generous offer. She settles down and, comforted by the blanket and Orc's assurances, quickly drifts off to sleep. As Tia sleeps soundly, Orc watches over her with a sense of admiration. He recognizes the toll their challenging journey has taken on her, and he is struck by her serene appearance. Orc finds himself increasingly attracted to her, noting not only her pleasing demeanor but also her considerable talents and appealing physique. Despite his growing feelings, he remains disciplined, content to simply protect her as she rests. He resolves to be patient, knowing that the potential for a future together makes the wait worthwhile. When Tia and Orc awaken, they set out together into a mist-shrouded forest, drawing closer to the elf village. As they navigate the dense woods, they come upon a fork in the path. Orc is strongly drawn to the left, sensing the presence of a unique barrier. Ignoring this urge causes a sharp throbbing in his head, leading him to cast a spell to dispel the sensation. This impressive display of magic catches Tia's attention, and she informs him that he is only the second person ever to overcome the barrier, the first being the great sage Merlin, his mentor. As they near the World Tree, Tia explains the vital role it plays in her tribe's existence. The World Tree, which her people revere, represents their mutual protection and harmony. They arrive at the village, known as Titania after the World Tree. Orc senses the presence of guards hidden in the bushes, likely monitoring their arrival. When Orc introduces himself and Tia to the guards, his sincerity and Tia's support help to gain their trust. Two elves, including Tia's grandmother, step forward, and a heartfelt reunion ensues between Tia and her grandmother, who embraces her tearfully. However, the village chief, Tanya, is less accommodating. She is immediately put off by Orc's mixed heritage, as the elves traditionally harbor disdain for Orc and human blood. Tanya demands that Orc leave at once, but Tia intervenes, expressing her gratitude for Orc's assistance. She describes him as a gentle Orc who has treated her with kindness, which softens Tanya's stance slightly. Despite this small improvement, the chief remains cautious. Orc, understanding the gravity of the situation, decides to be forthright. He openly shares his goal of finding the most exceptional individuals for his harem, hoping to discover them within the village. He promises, however, to respect the wishes of any girl who does not wish to be involved. This honest declaration lays bare Orc's intentions, setting up a critical moment for potential acceptance or rejection by the elf village. The village chief, Tanya, stood in shock at the unexpected honesty and pure intentions shown by Orc. On the other hand, Tita, filled with anxiety, grew increasingly agitated, fearing that Orc's words might provoke her grandmother's wrath. As tension mounted, Tanya angrily demanded Orc to leave immediately, but Tita stepped in, defending Orc's credibility and emphasizing his reputation for keeping promises. Despite Tita's heartfelt pleas, Tanya's opinion of Orc soured even further. However, after a moment of contemplation, she reluctantly agreed to allow Orc to stay in the village for one day, warning him not to harbor any romantic ambitions. Tita, relieved by her grandmother's concession, guided Orc into the village, realizing she was not ready to part ways with him yet. As they ventured deeper into the village, the atmosphere shifted. The villagers greeted Tita warmly, and Orc couldn't help but observe the lively and welcoming environment around them. Tita led him to her home, instructing him to wait as she changed into a more fitting outfit. Upon seeing Tita's new attire, Orc couldn't hide his admiration and expressed his desire to meet her parents to show his respect properly. However, Tita's cheerful demeanor dimmed as she revealed the painful truth about her mother's illness. She took Orc to another room, where her mother lay unconscious, clearly suffering. Tita explained that her mother had been ailing for months and that her efforts to find a cure beyond the village's borders had been in vain. Feeling a deep sense of guilt, Tita apologized to her mother, tears welling up in her eyes. Sensing an opportunity to win Tita's favor, Orc offered to examine her mother, hoping to find a solution. Tanya, still wary of Orc's intentions, interrupted, suspecting he might have an ulterior motive. Tita, unwavering in her belief in Orc, defended his character. Orc, trying to lighten the tense atmosphere, admitted he found Tita's mother beautiful and made a playful remark about the possibility of having a child together. To prove his sincerity, Orc began using his magical abilities, hovering his hands above Tita's mother to diagnose her illness. Gathering various tools and medicinal ingredients, he summoned a water fairy to mix the necessary medicine. For an hour, Orc meticulously administered drops to Tita's mother. Her condition showed signs of improvement, but Orc confessed that the treatment required ingredients he did not possess and more time than he could stay in the village. Despite Orc's earnest efforts, Tanya remained firm in her decision that he must leave the village the next day. Tita, desperate and determined not to let this chance to save her mother slip away, pleaded with her grandmother to reconsider. As tensions escalated in the village, the future remained uncertain, with hope and apprehension hanging in the balance. Despite Tanya's initial resistance, Tita suggests taking her mother outside the village so Orc can treat her. Orc, however, protests, explaining that he has only one day in the elf village and is determined to find a girl for his harem. Tita, perhaps out of desperation, tells Orc he can have her if it means saving her mom. Orc appreciates her offer but insists he wants a girl who genuinely desires him, not one who feels obligated. Tita struggles to understand Orc's stance, questioning if he finds her attractive enough. Orc reassures her that he does find her beautiful but emphasizes that he seeks both the body and heart of a girl. Tanya, initially seeming to go mad at the situation, eventually reassesses her view of Orc, realizing he's not a bad person but rather a teenager driven by hormones. She requests him to stay as long as needed to save her daughter, and Orc, determined to help, agrees. Orc embarks on a quest to find the necessary ingredients, scouring the village for herbs and using his magic to enhance their properties. He meticulously prepares the medicine and, with the assistance of a water fairy, administers it to Tita's mom over the course of a week. Gradually, her condition improves, and after a week, she opens her eyes, bringing immense joy to both Tita and Orc. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Tita hugs Orc, and he feels a profound sense of accomplishment. However, Orc's goal of winning over an elf girl for his harem proves more challenging than expected. Despite his newfound strength and charisma, the elf girls in the village remain uninterested. Tita comforts him, suggesting he might be approaching the situation the wrong way. Feeling disheartened, Orc sulks, but Tita cheers him up with a simple apple. Inspired by the simplicity and purity of the local food, Orc decides to teach the villagers how to cook delicious dishes, believing that winning their hearts through their stomachs might be the key. Orc worries about using his secret spices, fearing they might cause addiction or other unforeseen dangers. Tita thinks he's overthinking it, but Orc's cautious nature leads him to consider the larger consequences. After carefully contemplating the local ingredients, Orc devises a plan. He decides to introduce the elves to Asian cuisine, starting with a dish centered around wild boar, which is both abundant and flavorful. The culinary adventure begins as Orc sets out to win the hearts of the elves through the art of cooking. He starts by teaching them how to prepare the wild boar, sharing techniques and recipes from his world. The villagers, initially skeptical, become intrigued as the tantalizing aromas fill the air. Orc's passion for cooking shines through, and the elves slowly warm up to his efforts. As the days pass, Orc continues to teach the elves, bonding with them over shared meals and culinary secrets. He introduces them to a variety of dishes, each one more delicious than the last. The village starts to come alive with the excitement of new flavors and the joy of communal dining. Orc's determination and creativity begin to pay off, and he finds himself earning the respect and admiration of the elves. Tita, watching Orc's progress, feels a growing sense of pride and affection for him. She realizes that his persistence and genuine desire to connect with the villagers are what make him truly special. As Orc's culinary journey unfolds, he learns that winning hearts is about more than just achieving a goal. It's about building relationships and creating lasting memories. In the end, Orc's efforts not only help him in his quest but also bring the village closer together, forging bonds that will last a lifetime. Guided by Tita, Orc ventures into the village warehouse, where he discovers an assortment of crates filled with various types of potatoes, including some that have been turned into sweet potato wine. Inspired, Orc decides to use this wine as the foundation for a new seasoning to replace his secret spices. He ingeniously creates a potato mirin seasoning, perfect for his culinary needs. Orc faces the daunting task of preparing a meal for 200 elves with limited cooking equipment. Rising to the challenge, he summons an earth fairy to assist in crafting a giant clay pot. While Tita goes to gather firewood, Orc begins the meticulous preparation of the ingredients, demonstrating his exceptional skill by slicing them with lightning speed. As the firewood arrives, thanks to Tita's timely return, Orc builds a larger fire to ensure the stew boils properly. He fries and simmers the ingredients, adding mushrooms to enhance the flavor. The addition of his homemade potato mirin fills the room with a tantalizing aroma. The dish Orc prepares is nikujiga, a traditional Japanese meat and potato stew. The elves are delighted with the meal, finding it delicious. Taa, in particular, adores the dish. Orc takes the time to explain the cooking process to the curious elves, who express a strong interest in learning more from him. However, Orc notices a male elf with glasses who seems displeased, walking away with a frown. Despite his efforts to engage the elves, they disperse when he offers to teach them further. Feeling disheartened, Orc contemplates leaving the village once Tita's mother has fully recovered. Just then, the village chief, Tanya, approaches him. She expresses her deep gratitude for all that Orc has done for the village, including the feast he prepared, the medicine he distributed, and the new experiences he introduced. Although she was initially skeptical of him, she now holds great respect for him and offers him a permanent residence in the village. Orc appreciates Tanya's kind offer but politely declines. He explains that his primary mission, to find a girl for his harem, remains unfulfilled. Despite cherishing the time he spent in the village and the bonds he formed, Orc knows he must continue his journey in search of love. The bittersweet farewell marks the conclusion of Orc's culinary adventure in the elf village, as he prepares to embark on the next chapter of his quest. As Orc finishes explaining his plans to depart, Tita steps into view, stunningly dressed in bridal attire adorned with glittering jewels. Orc is momentarily breathless, admiring her beauty and hoping that she might finally wish to become his wife. However, his anticipation turns to confusion when Tanya reveals that it is actually Taa who has developed feelings for him during their time together. Taa steps forward and confesses her love, expressing her willingness to be with Orc. Ecstatic, Orc believes his hard work has finally paid off, but his joy quickly turns to turmoil as Taa clarifies her feelings. She desires him exclusively and requests that he abandon his dream of having a harem. Orc finds himself at a crossroads, torn between his long-held dream and his newfound feelings for Taa. Though he deeply loves her, he cannot easily forsake the ambition he has pursued for so long. With a heavy heart, Orc tells Taa the truth about his desire to have a harem. Taa is devastated by his honesty and runs away in tears, leaving Orc conflicted and regretful. 2 days pass as Orc continues treating Tita's mom while staying at Tanya's house. The atmosphere is heavy with unspoken tension. Sensing Orc's reluctance to leave, Tita's mom inquires if Taa is still avoiding him. Orc nods, acknowledging the difficulty of the situation but not blaming her. Appreciating Orc's honesty, Tita's mom suggests that Taa might still become part of his harem if she chooses to join. Determined to resolve matters before leaving the village, Orc searches for Taa and finds her sitting alone in a meadow. Taa avoids looking at him, questioning why he came if he doesn't even like her. Orc gently clarifies that he still likes her and asks her to reconsider joining him in building his harem. He promises to make her happy even if he loves other girls, pleading with her to stay by his side. A tense silence follows as Taa contemplates his proposal. Suddenly, an ominous sensation washes over them, unsettling both Orc and Taa. Tita arrives, voicing that she too has felt the eerie presence, hinting at an unexpected development that demands their attention. The atmosphere thickens with anticipation as Orc and the elves brace themselves for an unknown challenge, their emotions intertwined with the looming threat on the horizon. Alarmed by the attempt to breach the World Tree barrier, Orc senses a formidable presence trying to break through. Understanding the gravity of the situation, he firmly instructs Taa to remain in place and summons a wind fairy to propel him into the air. From his aerial vantage point, Orc discerns a human army on horseback assembling to attack the elf village. However, the true culprit is soon revealed, a male elf from Tita's village, the same elf who had previously shown disdain towards Orc. Driven by resentment and a burning desire to prove his worth, this elf casts a powerful spell to shatter the seal that confines an ancient, monstrous demon bug beneath the World Tree. This creature poses a threat so severe that it could potentially annihilate the entire world. As the human army draws nearer, the elves scramble in a desperate attempt to prepare for the invasion. Women and children hastily seek shelter, while the men arm themselves with bows, ready to defend their village. Tanya, who has now turned Tita's house into a makeshift command center, struggles to gather sufficient information for a counterattack. The tension is palpable as the urgency of the situation grows. At this critical moment, Orc enters with a meticulously detailed map and the positions of the invading forces. Despite the initial suspicion from the village elders, Orc explains that he had flown into the sky and employed a search spell to collect the necessary intelligence. This revelation plants seeds of distrust among the elves, as they begin to question how Orc possesses such advanced magical abilities. The air is thick with tension and uncertainty, As the elves grapple with the dual threats of the approaching human army and the newly unleashed ancient demon, Tanya, though hesitant and acutely aware of the ticking clock, voices the question lingering in everyone's mind. Did Orc lead the human army to their village? Orc, vehemently denying any involvement with the humans, decides to prove his innocence and demonstrate his strength. To dispel any lingering doubts, he unleashes his spiritual energy, summoning fairies and showcasing his immense power. The elves, witnessing this display, are overwhelmed and terrified, realizing that Orc is indeed a formidable force. Having cleared his name, Orc agrees to aid the elves in defending their home from the impending invasion. With Orc's assistance, Tanya begins to formulate a strategy. The plan is for Orc to confront the human invaders directly, buying precious time for the elves to bolster their defenses. Impressed by Orc's determination and bravery, Tanya makes a surprising offer. If he succeeds, she will allow him to choose any girl he desires for his harem. Orc, however, politely refuses the offer, emphasizing that he only seeks consensual relationships and desires companions who genuinely wish to be with him. As preparations for the confrontation intensify, Taa, running alongside Orc, questions his refusal of the reward. Orc reiterates his preference for willing and genuine companions, explaining that he only wants girls who truly want to be with him. Taa, puzzled yet intrigued by his response, contemplates her own feelings and wonders if her answer to his proposal might be yes. Their conversation is abruptly cut short as the human army appears right in front of them, ready for battle. The stage is set for a monumental confrontation. The elves brace themselves, knowing that the outcome of this battle could determine not only the fate of their village but potentially the entire world. With Orc standing as their ally, they prepare to defend their home against the formidable human invaders. Orc, though confronted by seemingly ordinary humans, knew better than to underestimate them. His mind raced with the possibilities. Could these be the ones who had dispelled the world tree barrier? The thought that their strength might rival even Merlin's crossed his mind, filling him with a sense of urgency. Regardless of their capabilities, Orc steeled himself, determined to defend the elf village at all costs. Calling upon the wind fairies, Orc enveloped himself in a protective jet stream armor, ensuring Taa was left behind in a safe place. With a powerful burst, he launched himself into the sky, then descended like a missile, knocking his foes off balance upon impact. Despite the ensuing chaos, Orc maintained complete control, swiftly incapacitating his attackers with precise, non-lethal strikes. Arrows rained down upon him, but he remained unfazed, effortlessly deflecting them with his jet stream armor. As the dust settled around him, Orc's concern grew. The victory had come too easily, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Someone had breached the barrier, and it was likely they were already within the village. With this in mind, he raced back, urgency driving his every step. Upon his return, Orc quickly briefed Tita on the unfolding situation. He inquired about any heavily guarded locations that might now be vulnerable. Tita revealed the existence of a shrine beneath the world tree, a place where an evil god had been sealed away. Orc's suspicions deepened. The human army was merely a distraction. The true threat lay within the village, where a traitor was likely attempting to unseal the evil god. Rushing ahead, Orc's fear grew with each passing moment. He knew time was of the essence, and he could only hope he wasn't already too late to stop the impending disaster. Upon returning, Orc was immediately struck by a dark, ominous force emanating from the ground. Hastening to the cave, he discovered that it had been breached. Inside, black wisps swirled ominously, confirming his deepest fears. Standing before him was the male elf, the betrayer. Orc confronted him, astonished by the elf's motives. The elf, showing signs of boredom and a yearning for recognition, had betrayed his own people. As the elf justified his actions, Orc understood his desire for the allure of human civilization and the validation it promised. Despite this understanding, Orc saw through the elf's delusions. He dismissed the elf's excuses with a decisive punch, ending the conversation with a resolute gesture. Though Orc felt a twinge of sympathy, he recognized the elf's misplaced desires and refused to be swayed. With time slipping away, Orc shifted his focus to the imminent threat. Dark shadows continued to seep from the pillar, signaling a dire challenge ahead. The fate of the village and the world itself hung in the balance as Orc prepared to confront the unleashed evil god. Unable to reseal the evil god, Orc knew he had no choice but to face the monstrous entity that had been released. Rushing out of the cave, the ground beneath him began to quake. From the tremors emerged a colossal insect, a grotesque amalgamation of worm, centipede, and earwig, known as the world-eater worm. With its numerous eyes and pincers, this horrifying creature posed a formidable challenge, and Orc braced himself for the battle that lay ahead. The battle erupted with ferocity as Orc launched the initial strikes, aiming to bring down the malevolent god by attacking its legs. However, the World Eater worm, with its uncanny ability to regenerate, quickly healed, frustrating Orc's efforts. Taa arrived on the scene, breathlessly asking if Orc had caused the explosion they had witnessed earlier. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Tita urged Orc to flee, insisting that he was not obligated to protect the village. Despite Tita's urging, Orc couldn't bring himself to abandon the place he had come to care for deeply. He vowed to defend the World Tree, the heart of the village. Taa, concerned for Orc's safety, could only watch as Orc sped away, determined to tap into the latent power within him. The World Eater worm, now almost fully regenerated, was proving difficult to restrain. Orc's best efforts seemed in vain as the colossal creature pushed him back, inching ever closer to the roots of the World Tree. During a fleeting moment of doubt, Orc questioned his relentless pursuit of strength, but the memory of Tia's radiant smile reignited his resolve. Deciding it was time to unleash his Orc power fully, Orc broke not only the first seal but also the second. His monstrous form emerged, and he, ready to become a monster to defeat one, engaged the World Eater worm with renewed vigor. The fate of the elf village, and perhaps the entire world, rested on Orc's broad shoulders as he faced the monstrous foe with everything he had. As Taa and the elves watched in stunned silence, Orc allowed the worm to engulf him. Taa, overcome with grief, believed Orc had sacrificed himself. The worm, now nearly at full strength, prepared to crush the World Tree. However, the tide of the battle turned dramatically as a sudden shriek of pain pierced the air. A giant fist burst from the worm's belly, signaling an unexpected and astonishing turn of events. From the belly of the World Eater worm emerged a towering Orc, covered in dark fur and sporting 2 pairs of menacing horns. His fierce demeanor left no doubt about the destructive power he now wielded. With relentless fury, Orc pummeled the worm into submission, showcasing the formidable strength that had been unleashed within him. The elves, including Tita and Tanya, could only watch in a mix of awe and fear as Orc demonstrated his newfound might. Despite the victory, the destructive urge within him lingered ominously. In his monstrous form, Orc considered turning his wrath towards the World Tree, but was halted by a voice reminding him of his promise to Tia. This voice restrained his rage, and, though conflicted, Orc marched onward, seeking another outlet for his destructive impulses. Amidst the chaos, Taa appeared, desperately calling out to him. Yet, he ignored her pleas, consumed by his rampage. Undeterred, Taa professed her love for him, declaring she would accept him even in his monstrous form. These heartfelt words pierced through Orc's fury, bringing him back to his senses. Realizing the need to regain control, Orc resolved to reseal the monstrous power within him and return to his normal self. Moments later, the monstrous Orc began to transform, reverting to the more human-like form of Orc. Embarrassed by his nakedness and the destruction he had caused, he wished the ground would swallow him whole. However, Tia's joy and relief provided him comfort. She ran to him, throwing herself into his arms and kissing him passionately. With the threat averted and the World Tree saved, Orc stood with Tia by his side, feeling a mix of relief, love, and a newfound understanding of the immense power he possessed. The tale concluded on a hopeful note, with Orc back to his normal self, Tia's love reassuring him, and the village safe once more. The bond between them strengthened, and Orc's journey of self-discovery had only just begun. Discover the thrilling journey our protagonist has mapped out for the future. Uncover the strategies he's concocting to expand his enchanting entourage of ladies. Join the excitement and adventure that lies ahead by staying tuned for the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to catch all the action. Hit the bell icon to receive instant notifications when Part 3 drops. Until then, see you in the next installment.